good news. And I know this channel doesn't often get the opportunity to give, this kind of, good news per se, especially coming from the source that I'm bringing it from. But there's good news. The guy who's back there kidnapping this baby that seems very uncomfortable with the fact that she's being kidnapped. I don't know if she's being kidnapped, but Ron DeSantis, he's governor of Florida. If that name is familiar to you, it's because Ron DeSantis beat the stuffing out of Andrew Gillum. Gillum would have been the first African-American Florida governor in Florida, and ran to some degree, for the most part, as a lefty, with the exception of getting to the end of that campaign where he's bringing in Hillary Clinton, Deborah Wasserman-Schultz, Cory Booker, and he's talking about foreign policy being a hawk on foreign policy in Venezuela, even though he's trying to be governor of Florida. He was trying to beef up his right-wing bona fides while at the same token trying to run as a lefty. That said, he came extraordinarily close to becoming governor of Florida, closer than a lot of other people came, especially centrists came to being governor of Florida. He came close. He was plagued by certain issues that was taking place in Florida, if I'm not mistaken, one of those issues being this kind of corruption charge, that whether or not it was bogus, at the very least was able to take a chunk out of him, and enough of that chunk for DeSantis to win. So I didn't have any good expectations of what was going to take place in Florida. Now, one of the things that is good that was going to take place in Florida was a ballot initiatives that passed that allowed millions of people who were felons to get their voting rights back. Florida was one of those states where if you had any, felony on your record, for the most part, you were going to lose your voting right almost forever. So this was something that was a good ballot initiative, but that didn't have anything to do with DeSantis. I had no really good expectations for Florida. So what astonished me in my news feed that I read today, this is an announcement from Florida's office, from essentially DeSantis. And Governor Ron DeSantis announces major water policy reforms. Sounds somewhat mundane and somewhat of a long document, and there's some good stuff in here. Today, Ron DeSantis signed Executive Order 1912, implementing major reforms to ensure protections of Florida environmental and water quality. Great, a Republican who's caring about water quality and the environment. Our water and natural resources are the foundation of our economy and way of life in Florida, said Governor Ron DeSantis. The protection of water resources is one of the most pressing issues facing our state. That's why today I'm taking immediate action to combat threats which have devastated our local economies and threatened the health of our communities. Okay, that's bland. I don't know what that means, because that could mean anything depending upon the person who's saying it. It's like what is his name? What is his name? I can see his face. The one who calls himself a Catholic, Paul Ryan. That's why Paul Ryan will go out and say, we're protecting the seniors by getting rid of their Medicare. Well, he doesn't say get rid of their Medicare. He says some kind of political stuff, but ultimately what that political stuff, as bland as it means, ends up meaning we're going to gut your Medicare. So I don't know necessarily what this means right off the bat when I'm reading it, but it sounds good. The order calls for $2.5 billion over the next 4 years for Everglades restoration and protection of water resources, $1 billion increase in spending over the previous 4 years, and the highest level of funding for restoration of Florida's history. Again, I don't know what that fully means. I don't know what that means in practice. But nevertheless, as you go through this, on its face, it sounds good. At the very end of this document, the last thing in this document, last sentence, I hereby direct the DEP to implement the following actions to protect Florida's coastline and natural resources. A. Create the Office of Resilience and Coastal Protection to help prepare Florida's coastal communities and habitats for impact of sea level rise by providing funding, technical assistance, and coordination among state, regional, and local entities. Hey, Republican governor, who is supported by Donald Trump, the person who doesn't believe in climate change, why on earth would there be sea level rise in this case? Why are you concerned about sea level rise? Climate change doesn't exist, right? And B, take necessary actions to adamantly oppose all offshore oil and gas activities off the coast in Florida and hydraulic fracking in Florida. The Republican governor who supported Donald Trump is calling for an end in fracking in Florida. That shocked the shit out of me. My expectations for Republicans are dramatically low. So, to some degree, the shocking It's purely just from my low expectations of what a Republican is going to do, be a governor or be it in a federal government. But applause. Like, I don't care if you say climate change is the reason why you're doing it, or if some other reason. Good. Applause. I'm not the only one that's giving him applause on this. He's going further than Democrats go on this particular issue. Governor DeSantis' decision follows on the heels of another Republican governor, Governor Larry Hogan in Maryland in 2017 to ban fracking also. DeSantis and Hogan, along with Cuomo's ban on fracking in New York, exemplified the fact that common sense environmental protections need not be a partisan issue. Agreed. As the Trump administration, even many Democratic governors continue to double down on oil and gas and fracking, it's more important than ever that state and local leaders in both parties do all they can in power to halt fossil fuel extraction, destroying our climate and poisoning our water. Interestingly enough, climate change is not mentioned in the document that DeSantis released, not once. Not once. For him, this is an issue of water policy reform, not an issue of climate change. I don't care how you get there, I just care if you're there. What is this organization? This is called Food and Water Watch. They're calling on Democratic governors. Gavin Newsom of California. Mind you, California has supermajorities for Democrats. They still can't get him to do it. Jared Polis of Colorado, incoming Governor J.B. Pritzker of Illinois. Why did that name sound familiar to me? Should likewise move immediately to ban fracking in their states. Meanwhile, Governor Tom Wolf of Pennsylvania continues to fail his constituents and future generations by allowing fracking and dangerous pipeline buildouts that serve to lock in decades more fossil fuel development. No one can talk about a Green New Deal while simultaneously supporting policies that include more drilling for fracking in their state. This video is not long. I tend to go after politicians in both parties, and I tend to go after them rather vigorously because I feel that they fail the constituencies. And the issue is not Democrats or Republicans, it's both. The issue is both. I attack both because the issue is both. That said, in this one case, I don't necessarily care how DeSantis got to this point, but he is banning fracking in Florida by executive order. Good on you. Good on you. In this, California Democratic Party having a secret delegate election on Sunday. Are they now? Are they now? I have to look that one up, Trudy. And why do you said secret? Why do you said secret? They're doing it in private. Trudy, why do the elites believe in climate change, fly in private jets? Seems like it would be hypocritical to make climate change fake news. How? I don't understand that. That's the argument that is used against Al Gore. If you believe in climate change, why are you eating hamburgers? Let's be clear. Doing something about climate change is not something done on an individual level. This nonsense argument of, if you believe in climate change, why aren't you recycling? It's if somebody throwing their cans in a container is going to somehow stop climate change. Or as if a politician deciding not to go from point A to point B in a jet is somehow going to do it. This is going to take a global action, not purely an individual thing. So, yeah. It's not individual. Tulsi Gabbard's Republican Light, Jean Hoy Choi. Somebody else is making that argument. I don't know if I necessarily buy that entire argument, even if she may be more conservative on some items. Well, he's going to name Indian thing. Like her policy on the supporting Modi is not the greatest thing in the world. I knew about that one, but I suppose they're going to bring up others. But that said, I've always said I need to investigate her domestic policy, and that's true. And I would imagine that she is going to be put under a microscope engaging in this election coming up. So whatever you think of her, I guess we'll be discovering a hell of a lot more about her. H.A. Goodman versus the Humanist Report. No way! No way! H.A. is arguing with the humanists? No way! Tulsi doesn't support Modi. Tulsi does support Modi. What are you talking about? Unless that has changed. Unless that has changed, Danny. Show me where that's changed. At least show me a link to that. I can show you at least 2 articles that I've read with her supporting Modi. In fact, not just supporting him, helping him get into the United States and all. She has to be better than Warren. Well, look, there are, I don't think any candidate is perfect. The question becomes, are they so imperfect that it becomes a red line when you give them their support? That's a second question. Tulsi supporters' headcanon does not reflect. What? Tulsi supporters' headcanon? I don't know what that means. AJ Stripe, he is not. He is not. Tulsi gets support from Hindus because she's Hindu. She opposed HR 417 because it was bullshit. Oh. Tulsi needs to lose 35 pounds, 25. She is. That woman is awesome. I don't know what you're talking about. Funny, AJ used to be progressives. What a sellout. He's debating the Humanist Report. He's open to debating anybody, man. Whatever you want to think of AJ, whatever you want to think of him, he is down to battle anybody. Headcanon is fans' belief about their character. Oh, I see. I see. Tulsi gets smeared because she crossed the Clintons. That part is true. That part is true. Cool Blue 471. When a right-wing Republican, Florida DeSantis, moves to ban fracking before supposed progressive Democratic governors, the corporate Democrats are overdue to get fleshed. Part of me, honestly, part of the reason I'm doing this story is because I kind of want to show up the failings of the other party. The party that screams, we believe in science. We believe in science. The primacy of science. That party hasn't banned fracking, and the candidate they put up was expanding fracking across the world. This right-winger, like this hardcore right-winger, has decided to essentially do what many other Democrats who believe in science refuse to do. So, I am giving DeSantis an applause here, so don't get me wrong. This is probably going to be the only applause I end up giving DeSantis. But banning fracking is a common sense issue. Just saying. All right. I hope. Oh, Skip. I don't think Mike would do well against HA. I don't know. I don't know. So wait, are they having an argument? Have you ever said that a man needs to lose 25 pounds? Yeah, Trudy, get in his ass about that. I mean, that's nonsense. That's why, yeah, it's nonsense. That woman is perfect. Perfect size. I mean, I don't, you know. And even if she wasn't perfect size, so somewhat of a moot point, feeding into that fucking argument. AJ got his feelings hurt when he found out about HR Live. I thought he was going to cry. Trudy, I think she's hot. I think she's hot too, if I'm being honest. In fact, I still think I got her pictures up. Yeah. Talking about losing 25 pounds. You've lost your mind. The woman is awesome. The woman is awesome. Cool Blue 71. Happy belated New Year. Happy belated New Year's to you, Cool Blue. Happy belated New Year's to you. Yeah, the problem with the arresting Clinton stuff. Yeah, the problem with arresting Clinton stuff. The moment that you're running around the country saying, I'm going to lock up my political opponent, you've inoculated your political opponent for being locked up. Like, it's one thing if you hire somebody who goes through a legal process where they can say, look, this law was broken and nobody is above the law. And this wasn't something that the president did. This was something that I came to on my own. Kind of in the same way that the Clinton investigation was being handled. You know, Clinton, had a president who was favorable to keeping her out of jail. That president had an attorney general who was favorable to keeping Hillary Clinton out of jail, because all of them down the line were Democrats. That person, being overarching or overall in charge of the investigation, essentially would have talks with the person who was an investigator. And we're supposed to believe that at no point was there any pressure put on Comey not to do something. But at the very least, Obama could say I had nothing to do with it, and the other person could say Comey had the decision, meaning it created a level between the person who wanted something to be affected on the planet versus the thing that was affected on the planet. And there was enough of a distance between those things where he could say I had nothing to do with it. It was purely a choice down the line. The fuck up that Donald Trump makes on this is that you can't have it both ways. You can't say I want Hillary Clinton locked up and simultaneously get Hillary Clinton locked up. If you want her locked up, you have to do it in essentially somewhat of a way that's not so overt that you're trying to essentially put your own stamp on a process that is supposed to be purely illegal process. He wanted to use it as a campaign thing, and he wanted to try to fulfill that campaign pledge. You can't have it both ways. If you want to put it out there as a campaign thing in order to have people jump on it, you can't do anything about it after the fact. And doing something about it after the fact looks bad. It looks extremely bad. So you can't have it both ways. Global warming is the mechanism for human extinction. Feel free to light up. I have to say it again. H.A. head would explode when Trump is indicted. Oh man. If Donald Trump gets indicted, H.A. is gonna melt. Like, he's gonna fall the fuck apart. Skip Rock, lock her up was a zinger in the debate. Nothing more. No, Skip, you're wrong. You're wrong, Skip. Do you know, maybe you don't know this, Skip. Do you know that when Donald Trump got elected, one of the things that he was pushing his inner circle to do was look into trying to get Hillary Clinton locked up. This is reported. This is not something I'm making up. This was reported. And his own campaign staff, or the people who were in the government, were essentially telling him, you can't do that. That's a no. That's not the president's job to get people locked up, nor is that within your power to get somebody locked up. That is an issue for the Justice Department. That is outside of your purview. Part of the reason that he was screaming at Jeff Sessions was because ultimately it wasn't in his power to do it. And the people who were in the circle kept telling him, no, you can't do this. That's wrong, Skip. It was more than just a campaign thing. That was something that he was actually trying to pull off. Clinton indictment pending. Anthony Reyes. Now, here's another thing. They are investigating her. Like, so, just because Trump couldn't just get her locked up, they're still going through with the investigation of the Clinton Foundation, especially the uranium one stuff. So, Trump may get his way in the end if the Justice Department comes around and actually finds reasons to lock her up. By the same token, Trump is not going to be impeached. I have no belief that Trump is going to be impeached, let alone I don't think he's going to be indicted. But if he is indicted, I got to be honest, I'm going to be watching H.A.'s show that day. That is going to be fucking classic meltdown. When Trump won the election, and as you're watching it get later and later into the night, and it becomes more clear that Trump is going to win, that is a classic episode of TYT that should be downloaded, because it is the funniest shit you'd ever see in your life as they utterly melt down. At one point, Anna leaves the show. She can't take it. She's like, oh, I can't take it. And she leaves. And she comes back angry at Trump voters. It was the wildest shit ever. It was the wildest shit ever. Oh, man, it was wild. It was so wild. Brett, H.A. says nothing we ask. Now, he's weak on that argument. He's been on the show arguing about Israel. He's very weak on the Israel argument. H.A. says nothing when you ask, why do we give Israel $80 billion when they have Medicare and free college? It's crickets. He is right. You're right. You're right. TYT election meltdown was epic. Yeah, that was epic, man. That was epic. That was an epic show. Like, the funny part is, Cenk did a 100 days of calling Trump stupid. Trump is so stupid, and then he'll go into the video about why Trump was stupid or why he was incompetent or all this stuff. He did this for like 100 days. This was his political thing of trying to, I guess, stop lefties from voting for Trump, or stop certain people from voting for Trump, or just as a way of backing up the Democratic Party in their attacks on Trump. And while I agree with them that voting a Republican in office is entirely gross, voting a Democrat in office to some degree is entirely gross, especially when they say they're going to do certain things and then they don't pull off those things. Don't even have an intention of pulling off those things, and governs to some degree from the right. But in this case, I had no illusions about what Trump was going to do when he got in that office. But by the same token, I didn't have a dog in this fight. Didn't vote for Hillary Clinton. Didn't vote for Donald Trump. At this point, I'm just a spectator. While I didn't necessarily know what it was going to mean fully with Trump being elected, watching them melt down was fascinating. It was fucking fascinating. Extraordinarily fascinating. Alright, let me end this because I have another video coming up. Democrats are really going to have a show up for next Hillary. Oh, don't say that. Don't say that, Skip. Don't say that. Don't say that. Democrats are going to really show up for Hillary the next time around. They're going to have to show up. Don't say that. Don't say that. 22 million from Democratic donors has an effect on TYT's editorial policy. So, the funny part is, when TYT and Cenk makes the argument that a politician leans in the direction of who's giving them the cash, I buy that argument. That argument makes all the sense in the world. Like, essentially, they go in the direction that they're incentivized to go, and incentives go towards cash, seeing as 90% of the people who win the election are the side with the most cash. It makes sense. But you can't have that argument and simultaneously have an argument of us getting all of this money from a Democratic contributor in no way changes our perspective of the show, making us fall more in line with Democratic policy. Fact of the matter is, just because you're a little bit further to the left doesn't necessarily mean you're not sheepdogging into a party that's not. And just because you can agitate and everything else and people feel that, you push further, ultimately your pushing further still ends up sheepdogging people into a party that is essentially not going to see to those aims. So I feel you on that. That meltdown was epic though. McKinney, DNC will much rather rail against Trump and get their money than Tulsi or Bernie, than let Tulsi or Bernie win. So people are going after Tulsi on some of this stuff. Like I said, I need to go further into her domestic policy. I've read one article. I'm having to go at her, but it's hard to know whether one article is indicative of reality. I've seen her state her policies in other accounts. I've seen her issues list in certain things. But some of the concerns that people have go beyond her policies within the United States, more so with her policies with regards to India and the Muslim population in India. So I'm not going to, do a video on that when I don't necessarily know all the details on it. But that said, we're strayed far away from the point. Bernie Tulsi. Yeah, Trudy, that's not bad to me. That's not bad to me, Trudy. I like that. All right, I'm going to end this, but what this boils down to is Ron DeSantis bans fracking in Florida. It's amazing. I saw that and was shocked by that. I was like, okay, this can't be right. And I started looking about this, and then I found the primary source of the information, and the primary source of the information was DeSantis himself. Not a word of climate change in the entire document. I can pull this up. Climate change is not in the document once. And despite not mentioning climate change once, ban fracking in Florida. So, shout out on this one very specific issue, no other issue, from Ron DeSantis, bans fracking in Florida. I end it here. If you guys enjoyed the content, please feel free to share, like, subscribe, and you can always support through PayPal or Patreon. Thanks all. I'll see you in 10 minutes or so. Bye-bye.